You know, when I do recordings like I'm getting ready to do, it's like, should I even do it? Because if you don't see the code, it's hard to even comprehend what I'm saying. So there was a video about Cern, C-E-R-N. They're trying to decode this reality, right? They're trying to smash particles into smaller parts so they can figure out what this place is. Which, you don't even need to spend all that money. You can do it with the words. Just break the words into parts and you see it. And so I was thinking about the word force, the forces that they would exert to break stuff into parts. And the word force. Now, before I say all this, remember, I've studied in the university system. I've had 3 levels of physics, university level physics, 3 levels of calculus and beyond, advanced math classes. So I'm getting ready to talk code, and I already know all the people who say, well, that's not what it says in the... I already know what the world teaches you. I know what it teaches you. I'm giving you a different view. I know what the world teaches. I know what the universities teach. I studied them my whole life. I studied the whole pie. And that's why I pray for God to show me. I was saying, Lord, look what's going on. Because I studied the whole thing as much as I could. All the data points. So when God revealed the code, I had to change my thinking from the world's view to what's really going on. So you take the word force and you break it into parts, just like Cern does, break stuff into parts. So we're looking for source code. So FOR means before, or in front of, or against. Just type FOR etymology. CE is 35, your speed limit. I'm speaking with a holographic perspective. Because it is written, the Holy Writ is wholly written, completely written, holographically written, hologram. The Holy Writ, the Holy Bible, is completely written at every level, every dimension. And so force, F-O-R-C-E, is pushing against you to force you into the CE walk. What is the CE walk? The letter C is agape. The letter E is spirit. Agape and spirit, what is that? That's the spirit walk. Not law, not letter. The letter killeth, but the spirit gives life. And so forces that you face off with in reality, and I'll talk about the space between objects in a minute, but the forces you face off with, whether you're driving a car, whether you're dealing with a person, whether it's communication, whether it's physical force, whether it's mental force, whatever the force is, it forces you to push out the baby. What'd Paul say? Apostle Paul said, I struggle, I labor in birth pains until Christ be formed in you. I labor in birth pains until Christ be formed in you. I labor in birth pains until Christ be formed in you. So what's the purpose of the forcing? If a man and woman want to have a baby, there has to be some force, pressure. There has to be some resistance. Just like driving a car down the highway, there has to be traction. If you didn't have any resistance, you would slide all over the highway. You couldn't go anywhere. There has to be resistance. There has to be force. There has to be a counter, back and forth, reciprocal. There has to be in electrical engineering, the first thing you learn is E is equal to IR. Voltage is equal to current times resistance. Without resistance, you wouldn't even have current flow. You have to have resistance in this reality to push out what? The baby until Christ be formed in you. Now, what's the purpose of space? So look at your door, a tree out in front of you, whatever's in front of you. There's space between you and that object, right? From the spirit plane, there's not really any space, and there's not any time, and there's not any distance, and there's no separation in the spirit, in Christ. But down here in the 3D, there's distance and space and time and forces and stuff to turn you, cut you and turn you and push you and bring you back to oneness. So what's the purpose of space? Space, if you break it into parts, is S-P-A-C-E. So ACE is one, right? I already told you what CE is. The spirit walk. So you want to be one with Christ. So you're going to have to learn to have the mind of Christ. And if you got the mind of Christ, you can walk in the spirit. And so space or pace. So you're walking somewhere. You're taking some paces, you know. In the physical, you pace. But it's an allegory of your spiritual walk. It's a typology of your spiritual walk. It's a metaphor of your spiritual walk. As you're pacing, so I want to go over there and touch that tree. There's space between, but I need to pace. So I'm integrating my paces into that separation between that tree and myself. So I want to go touch the tree or the brick over there or the fence. I got to pace it out. Let's say you have a project you want to work on, but you got to pace it out. You got to take baby steps. So force, it takes force when you hit the ground and you hit your foot hits the ground. There has to be force to transport across that space. That's why they have some shoes called Converse. Verse is to traverse. Converse, shoe, together term. So the Converse shoes allow you to traverse the space and give you some friction and force on your shoe so that you can go touch that fence or go talk to that person. And so the conversation is together turned, the pace, the force, everything is a turning machine, allegorically, literally, figuratively, symbolically, esoterically. Everything is a turning machine to force you higher. Higher of what? Higher in the spirit walk. Love and truth. If you're walking in the spirit, you have the mind of Christ. And the mind of Christ is truth and agape. When you face off with another person, eventually, if you face off with people long enough, you start to see, hey, they're just like me. They're just struggling. They're just trying to make it just like me. They just took a different path, but we're really the same. We just took a different path. That's why every person is per the Son. Per means by. Every person is per the Son or by the Son. Because Jesus is the firstborn among many brethren. Jesus, by him, all things consist. He's the image. God made man in his image. Jesus is God, so you're in the image of God. He's the firstborn. Yeah, but he came after. He came after, but he came before. There's before. Before. I am that I am, he said. He was before you, and yet he was after you. Because in Adam all die. So you're in Adam, which is before Christ, but Christ was before Adam in eternity past, the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. So Adam was after Christ, but before Christ in the 3D. He was after Christ spiritually, but before Christ in the natural. So if you really take that to the nth degree, I never thought about this before. So if Adam was before Christ in the natural, Eve was before Christ in the natural. But in the spiritual, Christ was before Adam and Eve. Yet he was greater. Even though Jesus was after Adam, he was greater than Adam. After the order of Melchizedek. So we move from law to grace. Law was because of Adam. Spirit was because of Jesus. Adam brought us down into the natural realm. Time, flesh, earthly, fleshly, temporal, space, time, repeat, cycle, birthing, struggle, death, separation. But Jesus brings us back into oneness and unity outside of time, outside of space. So this is why prayer and fasting is important, because when you do fast, you're bringing your body under subjection. What's the greatest greatest needs of a human? Well, you got reproduction, you got food, you got survival. So if you bring your body under subjection, you're breaking time. And so, what is space? It's teaching you how to pace it out. Pace what out? Spirit walk. What is force? It's moving against you to force you into the spirit walk. CE is spirit walk. And so what's happening? What's happening is everything that you face off with in the natural, in the 3D, in the physical, is trying to birth you from the natural to the spiritual. Birth you to a higher plane, to a higher mind, to a higher walk, to a higher position, to a higher state of being. And so no matter what you're doing, facing off, walking, meditating, thinking, comparing, line upon line, precept upon precept, is to force you into the mind of Christ. But a lot of people resist it. And the forces of the universe are stronger. And that's why they destroy themselves, because they give up. And they say, I can't be good enough. I can't do it. Exactly. So you cry out to God and you say, Lord, I can't do it, but you can. And that's where you step into the exchange life. You can't do it, but Jesus can. That's the exchange life. So all the things that Cern is doing, and all the scientists and the mathematicians, the physicists, the physics that they create, they're missing it. Is to push you to the spirit realm, the mind of Christ, away from the old Adamic nature to the mind of Christ, the second Adam. The first Adam brings death, the second Adam brings life. And so you see a whole holographic perspective instead of piecemeal. You move from pieces to wholeness. That's what's happening.